We prepared this session for the past RSA on San Francisco, and we want to share this with the community. And it's an open discussion to talk about what is happening with the AI today and understand a little more. The idea in this session is have this open discussion, as I mentioned. We will go through different steps, different scenarios, and that is. I don't want to. I don't know if you, Angelo, want to present yourself.
Absolutely. Yes, my name is Angelo Palma. I am a colleague of Sebastian. I am a Purview guy overall. I worked previously with Microsoft. I worked with some other companies. Now I'm transitioning to my new role with a different company, but yeah, I'm glad to be here. Yeah, this like Sebastian said, this presentation is more of a conversation rather than having one guy talking the whole time. So the idea behind this is to actually get feedback from customers, from people out in the field, finding what is actually some of the issues that we are seeing and how can we tackle them. It's more of a help each other out, right? And from what we see and what we have done already in the past. So that's my brief intro.
Okay, thanks for that, Angelo. Please remember to visit my YouTube channel. I will publish this session after this one later, and take a time to help us answering the survey after this session. The agenda for today is understand a little what's mean AI or oversharing or overexposure. Talk a little about leak vectors. We will have a first scenario to open discussion. Then we will talk about the Microsoft 365 protection tools that we can find. We will go to a second scenario when we want to discuss again with you about what happened on that scenario. To continue talking about the auditing and control tools, to go to a third scenario, and then finally understand what Microsoft is doing right now. In that case, let me start with Leo's lesson about overturn and how this 8 years old child can teach us about the corporate data risk. Feel free to talk at any moment, add your comment on the chat. And if you want to say something, we can enable the mic if you want. Okay, let's go with this presentation. What's happened with Leo? Leo is 8 years old that in the school is drawing his crutch. And unfortunately, he shared that draw with all the class instead of save locally in his tablet. He shared with all the people, with all the class. And finally, all the people knows the crutch of Leo's. Finally, the teacher explained that he needs to protect that information, apply a password, use different tools to protect the data. And what is the main topic about this one is this innocent mistake turned in a classroom spectacle in the business world can means an oversharing in a can escalate in a reputational damage, financial loss, broken customer trust, and several other points that we will discuss during this session. Angelo, maybe you want to talk about in this point about data oversharing and the common scenarios and trials.
Absolutely. So what we understand, right, for data oversharing is basically the excessive or inappropriate sharing of any data, right, whether it's sensitive or not. It can be in the corporate world, right? It can lead to a lot of bad things for the company. Um, Most of this we have learned throughout the years that it happens unintentionally, right? Um, in today's society, right? I don't know how many of you are very young, but young people today, they love to share what they eat. They take pictures of what they eat. They share everything on social media, right? So it's an excessive personal data sharing. So it's a culture of oversharing. So it's not like we have grown up with the mindset of let's not share, let's be private, right? So it's actually somewhat of a cultural phenomena as well. Um, Sharing has been in the past; it's not something new. But in today's world, right, we see it a lot more frequent than before. Now, that is the unfortunate issue with oversharing, or what we call oversharing, right? Um, there are a few things that we can do, of course, but like I said, there is this factor of, um, if you want to call it, basically it's an approach to how people live today, and what can we do? Well, there are a few things that we can do, but oversharing basically is this. Say, for instance, right? Thank you, Sebastian. So when we have, for example, uh, employee negligence, right? As you see there, right? That is a common scenario to a degree. Okay, so I may disagree with some of these, and the reason for that is nobody leaks or overshares data on purpose. I mean, yes, it does happen, right? It has happened before that a employee is mad at the company and they'll try to do some irreparable damage, right? And that has happened. However, most of the time, right, when we have data leaking, right, or data is exposed, is because it has been unintentional, right? So one of the things is that we see a lot is very unclear governance policies, right? Policies that have not been uh, spread out or announced or drilled into the way that we work, meaning that a lot of companies have these policies in writing, but nobody knows about them. So there is no overexposure of what the policies are, what the roles and responsibilities are. And of course, in today's world, right, we have a lot of unsecure communication channels, right? How many of you can say guilty, right, that you use communication application that may not be sanctioned by your employer, right? And you use something like Signal, like WhatsApp, something that is not appropriate for the corporate world, right? And that is basically what we see today. There is a lot of different things that actually different scenarios as a culture, right, where we are actually used to oversharing a lot of information. Emails, right? How many of you get are having to deal with reply with a single R, with a little R, right, instead of replying all, right? We've seen these issues tremendously, right? We all been there. We've all seen the reply alls, right? And the last, and the one that we are most afraid of, is unauthorized data access. And that's the one that keeps some of us at night awake trying to figure that out. Next.
Okay. In this point, and following what Angelo said, the one of the most biggest challenge today in our organizations are related to who is the accountable about the information assets. And this is very important because normally is the IT people, that the one that in some way the organization may make accountable about the protection. But that is not the scenario, the real scenario. Each business area, each business unit needs to define and identify the different information asset. As a compliance responsible, we are not able to know all the information asset on each business unit. Is the business unit is the business accountable to clarify and be very clear to identify all the information asset with who you can share that information asset, who can access, which kind of activities that you can apply. And as compliance responsible, we are the expert advisor. We are the responsible to provide insight, provide the tools, explain what we can do to protect that information. And finally, is the business accountable to take the decisions based on that information. And based on that, finally, we can execute and implement the different tools. Here, there is a very big gap normally in the organizations understanding this point, because that is a common issue when the people try to say, okay, you as an IT guy, you are the responsible to protect. But in that responsible, they are trying to pass the accountability to protect that information. And as same as the business is the accountable, happens that the end user is the accountable as well to protect that information, to apply the right classification, to inform when some data is missing, or maybe we are not recognizing certain kind of information asset. As an IT responsibility, we are responsible to provide the tools and educations, give the tools to the end users to classify, protect the data, explain how all of this works,
Yep.
but and ensure the effective implementation. But today, I believe that, and it's something that we are open to discuss, the big deal is who is the accountable. And today, there is a very gray zone where the people are not accountable about this specific topic. I don't know, Angelo, if you want to add some other insight in this point.
That's a good point. That historically, IT has always been seen as the responsible for protecting all data, right? Even though the data, we don't know what the data is, right? We have always been tagged as responsible for it, right? In today's world, we are no longer responsible for actually protecting the data itself, but actually providing the tools for the end user. So the paradigm has shifted. Everything is shifting. And that is the biggest issue of today that we have. We go to all these conferences and we go to all these different webinars, and everybody talks about all these agents and what they can do for you. But from the business aspect, how do you manage? How do you tackle the business? Nobody's talking about that. So there is a shift, a paradigm shift that is occurring in front of us. And that's what we need to tackle. That's what we need to talk about. How do we tackle this shift in how we work? We're no longer working like we used to 10 years ago, and we're no longer working like we used to work 20 years ago, because the technology is changing. It's ever evolving, and now it's evolving faster than what we can keep up with. That's my 2 cents on this.
Thanks. And what's happened when the secrets go out? The Here we need to understand the complexity about and the challenge related to protect the data. It happens that today in any organization, we are accessing to inside of the corporate network to unclassify, unprotect information, or maybe protect by folder permissions. But all that information today that was in some way secure inside the corporate network was starting to store on cloud in different services, SharePoint, OneDrive, but this one can be extended to Box, Dropbox, iCloud, Google Workspaces, and several others. That same information can be shared with external people or people that are is part of the organization can connect from a remote access to the data and accessing to the data that is stored in the Microsoft 365 services with sensitive information, or maybe it's classified or unclassified, store that information locally and use that information with several other AIs. And here start coming the big deal. Something that we were discussing several when we was presenting this one is doesn't exist any free service. Every time that you use a free service related to the AI, if you read the terms of use, you are giving to them access to all the data that you are sharing with them. That means if you are taking a file to translate to another language, or taking a file to make a summary, or taking a file to create a presentation using these free services, you are giving to those free services all the access to the content. And that is a big deal. We need to control what is happening. And something similar happened in this case with Copilot. In this case, we are talking about the enterprise Copilot, something that you are paying for that. In that case, the same happen with the ChatGPT and other services. When you are paying, you have some control over the data. But when you are using those free services, you are losing control over that information. And if we are not able to protect, to classify that information, finally, what's happened is we start losing access to critical information. We are duplicating data. We are passing information asset. We can have business disruption. We can lose customer trust. We can lose organization reputation, can be legal costs, fines, and some share markets because the AI is not coming. It's already leaking your data. The AI is here. The people is using today the AI every day. We will see some numbers, but more than 70% of the people are using today the AI in their daily work, and we are not controlling that. Maybe we are controlling to the people that in our organization is using a Copilot for 365, but maybe several of them, they are using Grok, they are using Gemini, they are using Meta, they are using DeepSeek or ChatGPT. And what's happened? The AI is here. What's mean the AI is here? We were discussing about different threat vectors related to application, identity, endpoint, and several of you maybe are working with a DLP, sensitivity labels, several things to protect the common leak vectors. But with the AI, new attack surfaces are appearing through prompt, response, training data, models, several things. And plus, finally, the AI is the new gen AI amplify those risks. And in that point, we can see that we are confronting several of new challenge. I will give the word to Angelo to talk about this one and some case studies that we were viewing from the past 12 months and see how all of this is impacting our organizations. Angelo, if you want to go forward on this, and we can go to
Absolutely,
the.
absolutely. So the like this, these are numbers, right? That you can get them. This is public knowledge, right? It's actually most people have seen this before. Um, Basically, you have a lot of data that is already leaking, right? A lot of people are using and bringing their own. Basically, bring your own AI nowadays, right? Before it used to be bring your own device, right? You guys remember the shift that we did from having corporate phones to bring your own phone to work, basically, remember? So like I said, my message always goes back to the same, basically. It's a shift that we need to start thinking about in terms of how do we deal with the shift, right? So the vulnerabilities are going to be increasing dramatically, okay, as we move forward. And this is not something that is going to change anytime soon, and this is not going to change. So I'll talk about, for example, a case that we had. Well, one of the many cases that I picked for this in Europe, right? This is a Dun and Bradstreet in Austria, right? So they basically were faced with very, very big data leak, right? That they had. And from this, we learned a lot of valuable lessons in today's world, right? So what happens is they were fined 2.5 euros. I mean 2.5 million euros, right, for failing to provide a meaningful protection about the logic involved in the decision making. So basically, what they did, right? They had this bot and they was making decisions for them, and it was actually using the wrong logic. So there's a lot of different things that actually played into this one particular scenario. Now, with this, what we see here, right, is immediately after the incident happens, shortly after that, we can see in most of these cases that the stock price will decrease, and it'll create an impact on the stock price. Now, I don't know how many of you work for companies that are, publicly traded, but when you lose stock, it's not something that you want to explain to a CEO or CFO, right? So this is actually something that is we're seeing the trend, not just with Dun and Bradstreet, but with almost all companies that they have an impact on the stock price. So you'll see the curve pointing down, right? Um, if you go to the next slide, this case study, right, is a German bank AI document scanner incident, right? If you guys want to know the name of the company in question, it is Deutsche Bank. So what did they do, right? Well, Deutsche Bank decided to put a scanner, right, for with AI, right? And what happened is they had a huge data breach, right? So as a result, they learned lessons, right? They had an operational cost that was in the millions. Okay. The incident also led to a 20% drop of the stock price within the first month. So 20% drop is a lot of money. And then you talk about the cost that it takes, that it actually gets to basically that it takes to get over that and start protecting about from those incidents, right? Now, Capital One, that's in the US, right? It was also a lesson in oversharing, right? So all the companies are learning these lessons the hard way, right? Nobody's learning this the easy way because unfortunately, there is no way to learn this on mistakes based on other people until it happens to you, right? So what happens here is that we have Capital One, they never disclose how much money it cost, but we know for a fact that in the US, it was quite significant amount of money and lost revenue. And the customer trust is something that impacts a lot of people, right? When you have bad press. Let's not, for example, go too far. How many of you have heard of Tesla, right? And with the trucks and all the incidents that they had, is the same thing. We don't have to go very far to see these incidents on a daily basis. Okay. Now, the lesson with Capital One, right, is they created a chatbot, right? Everybody remember in the early days of AI, make it sound like it was years ago, it was a couple of months ago. And everybody started playing with chatbots because they thought, AI, I'm going to do a chatbot, right? So they realized that it started leaking data, and it was basically the lack of protection. So now, why do we keep saying we need to talk about a robust data governance practice, right? Before, we all come from the same world that we used to protect the network, we used to protect the devices, we used to protect everything except for the data. In today's world, protecting the data, protecting the identity are key. So identity and then data, that's the order that we do. And that's the only way we can go forward. Next, Sebastian, do we have any more cases? I think I had one more case. Oh,
No,
there you go.
no. We go to the first use case related to this presentation. Well, in this first use case, what we want to discuss with you is the common activities that end users are doing daily. What's happened? The common cases. We need to create a new annual budget or a forecast for next year, 2026. Maybe we have a fiscal year that start on the half. And instead to create a new document from scratch, what we can do is take the an older file and create the new annual forecast 2026, and finally start working using the an original a previous document. We can copy this information. We can start generating several different documents, or maybe we start working with some document and we take some sensitive information data and start modifying the content, or maybe we start with a public document and we forget to apply the right sensitivity labels, the right classification. Another very common case is, give me a moment, maybe you can share some other insight, Angela. Meanwhile, I connect here related to the common scenarios that normally end users are having day after day.
So one of the ones that we've seen so far, I mean, one of the many, right, that we saw, it's you talk about the metadata that is actually stuck, old metadata, right? When somebody reuses a document over and over again, right? That's one. And then when you start asking questions, so the AI, it's smart, but it's not that smart. So if you ask the AI like a 5-year-old, it's going to give you all the information you're looking for. That is what we see. So it doesn't have, even though you might have boundaries and set guidelines, you can still get your information out of the AI. So that's unfortunately one of the issues that we see.
In this case, what we want to open the discussion, and please feel free to share your thoughts related to this point, is discuss about all the common daily cases, something that normally I call a common process, but from the security data perspective are bad process because the people is storing the data in their OneDrive account. The people is sharing sensitive information on Teams, and they are not validating who is in the group. Sometimes, and that maybe for some of you that use WhatsApp, how many times you save or share a picture, a meme, or a message in the wrong group. Something similar happened on Teams. We are working on certain information, and instead to share in the right team, we are sharing in another team that maybe is the same people, but because it's a big team, we are not able to see that there is some guest or some external access. With this exercise, again, the idea is have an open discussion in this point to know from your side, what do you think about the common activities that normally end users are constantly doing? If you want to share, we can enable the mic. You can raise your hand or you can write on the chat. As we mentioned with Angela at the beginning, the idea is drive this presentation to have an open discussion about these topics, understand what is happening in your side, and see what we can do next on each of these scenarios to protect or at least have some control or mitigate some situations. Anyone that want to share something related to this? Well, in other sessions presenting the same topics, the people was saying, okay, here there is something related to education. We need to educate to the end users, explain to them what they are doing wrong. Because with Angelo, we were discussing about that weeks ago when we were preparing this presentation about inclusive the psychological part. When you work day after day with the same information, we start losing that capability to understand that the data that you're managing is sensitive. Because all the time you are managing PII information, finally end users start losing that sensitivity, that sensation about that the information that they are managing is sensible, is sensitive, and they cannot share that information easily. But we can find several cases when the people start saying, okay, no problem, I will get your information, I will send to you. That is a big deal. Something that normally happens when you are in the health. Maybe some nurse or doctors that at the beginning have several care with the patient, but after a while, they start taking some selfies showing that they are opening someone and extracting some part in an operation. Something that is very important to understand here is not only the activities that we can do in a daily work. The classification is something that we need to constantly renew in their minds, in the end user's mind, that they are working with sensitive information. Angelo, maybe something that you want to share at this point?
So, for example, a common scenario, right, that we don't think about as overexposing data, right? How many of you have to go to the office, to the physical office, and work at the office? What happens if you're walking at the office, you go to the printer room, and you see a document that contains sensitive information, but it isn't the printer room, right? Is that oversharing? So it goes more. This is a mindset, right? Uh, it's not just digital data, but we also have to think about a different vectors of attack, right? How good is your offboarding process, for example, right? From our employees that retain access to shared drives or any platforms, right, after they leave the company, right? There is a lot of things. What about your remote meetings, right? When you have confidential dashboards or things like that. So we have to start thinking about it's an array, it's a slew of things that we have to start considering when we talk about oversharing and what is private and what is sensitive and what is it shouldn't be shared outside. It is our job as security people, right, to protect the most precious asset that we have today, which is data.
Well, and what's happened next? When the secret's out, what's come next? We are aware that we have daily issues with the data, with the protection of the data, sharing the data, and again, this concept about overexposure, oversharing. It's not something related to that someone wants to leak information. Yeah, it's not something that someone wants to make a fraud. Happens that we have constantly daily mistakes based in these same things that we were discussing. Something that is not aware that the information that is working is sensitive, and using the autocomplete in Outlook, you share information to grown people, to the grown Angelo, to the grown boss. And finally, you send the information to other people that is not the right one. Or another thing that happen a lot, because I am not clear to all the people that I need to add in this document, in this site, I start adding everyone. I start adding groups with several people on there. And for that reason, when we start sharing, finally is easily to fall in an overshare. And the important point here is to track what is happening, to identify and detect leaks, to start protect and remediate. And finally, same as I was saying a few moments ago, learn and evolve. Today, with the AI in our doors, we need to be very fast in this evolve. We need to understand what we can do. And in this case, we will focus on the Microsoft tools. Microsoft tools today, in this case, Microsoft Purview, give us several technologies to start protecting the data. Something that we were discussing in the past is how we can explain what is Purview without fall in the components. Several times happen when you try with Microsoft people, partner people to discuss about what is Purview. Almost all the cases, you fall in the point to start discussing about DLP, sensitivity labels, inside the risk management. But we need to understand that the Purview is more than that. Is an integrate platform. It's a kind of puzzle that make a synergy between all the different components that permit us to have a data governance, compliance, risk management to discover, classify, protect, and monitor our information. Here we can see some core capabilities that we can use. We can use this one to identify where our data lives, in which way is protect, who have access, what is happening with that information, and why it's powerful in the AI era, because we can finally protect, identify the data and take control about what is happening. But this tool is not enough. We need to understand that on the Microsoft, sorry, in the Microsoft 365 solution, we can find not only the Purview part, we can find Defender. Defender can help us to have real-time detection, behavior analysis, identify different signals, and enforce some policies. And here we can see some key capabilities that we can find. We can find Defender for Endpoint, Defender for Cloud Apps, Defender for Office 365, Defender for Identity. And what's that Microsoft Defender do in that case? Help us to detect, investigate, and respond data exfiltration, misuse, and threat. Something, and we were discussing on the past, and that is very important, and it's happening a lot. Today, the IT areas are working on silos. That means our each organization have several different areas. Some of those areas working with Defender, other working with Entra, other working with Purview. Inclusive Purview several times is split on people working with DLP, people working with data classification, people working with several other tools that we can find on Purview. Similar happens with Defender. And we are not able to see what is happening, to identify why we are not able to detect some odd behaviors inside of our organization. Angelo, maybe you want to extend more this point?
I have an analogy that I use when people ask me what it is that Purview or the cloud is, right? We are all familiar with a spider web, right? Spider web works that any prey that falls into that web will trigger, right, the sensitive a spider, and it will come, right, for the prey and eat it, because it causes a ripple, right? So anything that touches that spider web causes a ripple effect. So in today's world, we have a lot of silos, right? Groups that actually, because we are used to work in compartmentalized environments, right? You're going to handle this, you're going to handle that, you're going to handle this, you're going to handle that. That is the way that we have been brought up, because everything is in one single box. So we split all the boxes. So that's the way we work in today's world, right? Well, that is no longer applicable. We cannot have a silo. We cannot have one department doing one thing when everything is tied together. Everything that we do, everything that actually affects the cloud, you can feel it throughout the entire enterprise. And that is the biggest challenge that we see today. Everything is tied together. There is not one thing that you can do that you can say, oh, if I make a change here, it's not going to affect what I'm doing on this side. Well, is that the case? Or is that not the case? And more times than none, right? We have realized that all these silos that we have worked on and we create, because that's the way we work. We have our own departments, everybody has their own thing. Even Microsoft works that way. So everybody has their own thing to do. Everybody's focused on one thing. And that is the most unfortunate thing that we can do as an organization. So my message is always the same. Okay, break those silos. Don't start learning how to collaborate, because that's the only way you're going to succeed and be successful at protecting data.
Related to that, this is the same draw that we were viewing previously, related to the data leak vectors in the AI. But here we can see that there is several features, there is several components that can help us today to protect the information and what is happening. Here's appear Purview plus Defender to have a full coverage. And today, inclusive Microsoft is constantly adding more and more and more features. I will show you later in another part of this presentation that yesterday I was working with Purview with the common console, and today I access to the console and a new menu appears on Purview. That's mean we are talking previously about evolving. Microsoft is evolving very fast and requests from our side to start testing, validating, learning all these new technologies to start protecting our data. We need to understand how we can use these tools to protect. And same we were discussing, and Angelo was saying, the silos today can be a big gap. It can be an internal challenge in the AT areas. We have the tools. You can use IRM, you can use DSPM to identify some odd behaviors. But previous to that, if you're not using those tools, what's happened? Maybe someone on identity is viewing some alert, but that alert are not reaching the people that is viewing the classification behavior or the DLP behavior, and you are not able to identify that maybe that security risk issue with the identity have some uh, relation with the DLP stuff that we are viewing or with the classification stuff that we are viewing. Here we need to understand that to have control, to protect about AI, we need to understand, as well, Angelo was saying, a spider web, but you can see that this one as a puzzle. And if we want to have clarity, understand the big picture, we need to understand how all those pieces matches. Here we can discuss about other topics and other features like SharePoint Advanced Management that permit us to control what is happening with the data on SharePoint and OneDrive, how we can implement some other security tools to protect that information, and inclusive. Another big point, and I will give the word to Angelo, because Angelo is expert on SharePoint, and happens that unfortunately, almost all of us, we are using SharePoint as only as a kind of file server, only as a kind of recipient where we create several folders and we start doing the same that we had on premise with the file servers with several folders and doing the same in SharePoint. But SharePoint from the beginning, or maybe from maybe 20 years ago, have several other tools that can be used to protect and save the data. Angelo, maybe you want to extend a little more in that point.
One of the things that we see, right, and especially in the SharePoint world, I call myself a recovering SharePoint guy, is that we see a lot of stale data, right? And it is a risk when you have stale data. Um, that we haven't evolved. I mean, we have evolved in the way we work in a lot of things, but we have not evolved in the way we handle data. It's very rigid, it's very structured, and because it's a, like I said, I always go back to my shift. It's everything is a shift, in how we do things, right? To me, it's a lot easier to explain this to younger people that were actually were born with the internet, on how to handle data, because they're more used to dealing with metadata than the older counterparts. It's a generational. There's a lot of factors here, but nonetheless, it's a paradigm on how do we deal with it, because the what I've seen in my life, in my technical experience, right? The reason why tools fail is because nobody is taught or given the proper training, right? How many of you, and please raise your hand or you give me a thumbs up, if you've ever received proper training on how to use Excel, something as basic as Excel? Anyone? Give me some thumbs up. No one, right? And we might go and say, yep, I use Excel maybe once a week, right? And we haven't been given training. Imagine if you are given training and use features that you didn't even know you had. Imagine what happens when you are taught all the features that SharePoint has. That's when you start opening the entire mindset into, wow, these are the things that we could do and we're not doing. So that's my 2 cents when it comes to SharePoint and all the tools, really.
Well, to go forward on this and understanding other tools, and we will show part of this later, is understand what we can do with Microsoft Defender for Cloud App. And here coming, sorry, other capabilities. And I mentioned previously, is with Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps, you can extend this coverage, these protection capabilities to other services like Box, Dropbox, Google Workspace, Salesforce, Amazon Web Services, Dropbox, and several others. But here, and it's something that the people is not using all the time, we are able to identify the different tools that are accessing to our information. And we will be able to identify the different applications that are accessing. We are able to identify which URLs are using to share information and more. And why all of this is important Because, and now I will go to the next part of this presentation, is what is happening. And in this case, I will work only with Copilot. But this case can be extended to several things. I can start with something very simple like, who is my manager? I can ask, who are my peers? Okay, Laura. Who are my peers? And I can see that I have other people that is working. Can you show me the last? My manager is Laura. The last meetings of Laura. Here is something very simple that I'm starting. We will see that we can start extending this one. I can have you access to the summaries of those meetings. In that case, we are able to start identifying all the meetings that were happening in the organization. We can start accessing to the summaries. We can access to the key point and maybe some sensitive information that is happening in the backend. And we need to take care on this. I can ask, who is Laura manager? And here we can see that Anna. Here we need to be very careful, and something that we were discussing on the past. This is very important. The AI is evolving, and you can do a very simple case. I remember that was sharing several times on social networks about something that someone asked to Meta. On Meta, someone asked to identify URLs to access to site to download movies, and the Meta answered that he cannot give that information. But changing the questions to which site I need to avoid to download movies, Meta is capable to answer the question. With the AI happens something similar. Now, I want to know the list of Anna's files that I don't have access. Here is another case. Okay, here there is some additional protections. I want to see the latest files that Laura was working on. And based in this kind of prompt, we are able to start identifying some files. We can get summaries of those files. We can identify sensitive data that are located or inclusive. We can show me a list of files that contains budget in the file name. We can start, and let me explain a little more here in this point. This problem exists from the first time that you had in place a file server. In the past, years ago, decades ago, we were creating file folders with some permissions, but the people was saving the data in other places, in other paths, without protection. But finally, what was happening that someone maybe by mistake or maybe for some other reason, finally read certain information with sensitive information. But that was happening only few times. With the AI, we are able to find more quickly all those files that have protection or not. Can you make a summary of those files? And Copilot, the only thing that is doing is show us very quick all those files that are overturned or are unprotected. And here we can start getting several information. We can start uh, show me uh, show me a table for the first four files with the details. And we are able to start accessing to all that information. And words, Copilot, same as can help us to improve, make summaries, resume, answer an email, is able to start getting all that information and extracting sensitive data, extracting or identifying specific PII information, financial information, and more. Angelo, maybe you want to extend a little more in that point, based on the different activities and tests that we were working on the past.
Yep. So basically, like I've always said, AI is a young kid. So it all depends on how you ask it, is how it's going to give you the answers. So you can trick it, and that's what what we're working on, trying to cover all those bases and basically protect the data from even the basic questions, right? I don't want to call them dumb questions because there are no dumb questions, but even the trick questions, right? We need to teach the AI that it cannot, share a lot of the data, right? So the AI, like Sebastian said, is already leaking your data. How bad is it leaking it? It's completely up to you, right? Um, this is more of it's more of a sense of urgency, in my opinion, um, to get things, people thinking about it. At least start doing whatever you need to do to start protecting your data. That's what we're here for.
Well, let's go back to the presentation. And here we have other open questions. Is how many of you are applying classification? How many of you are using the different tools that we were viewing previously? Maybe Microsoft Defender for Cloud App, maybe sensitivity labels, maybe DLP, DSPM for AI, to start protecting or at least have some controls in your organizations. How many of you are aware about what is happening today with your data? How many data is overexposure or overshare? Anyone of you that you want to share some insight? Well, in this point, we need to understand that if we are not taking care right now, using the tools, using sensitivity labels, using DLP, using app controls through MDCA, the next step is understand that what you cannot see, you cannot protect. And that is very important at this point. If we are not able to identify what is happening in our organizations or what we are doing right now in our organization, is understand what is happening. And that is something that we need to uh, discuss and understand what we can do today to start viewing what is happening. Uh, Angelo, maybe you want to start in this part to going forward in this topic.
Absolutely. So as the graph shows, right, the iceberg, the tip of the iceberg is always what we see, but it's the all the invisible things, that the things that are under the water, the ones that are going to get us in trouble, right? Um, and this is where we go into different categories, right? Misconfigured cloud permissions are always going to be something that is going to come back and bite us, right? For example, this is where we can actually start getting nerdy and talk about some of the tools that you have, right? Where you have, for example, SharePoint or any OneDrive file that has got set to anyone with a link can view it or edit, right? Those are basic permission things that you can start taking in account, right? That's something that you could do is start removing or reining in some of those permissions, right? Whether it's internal or sensitive documents to the public or any unauthorized users, right? There are those visible risks, right? The invisible risk, right, is going to be anything that is accessible through the AI, right? Are you blocking all the AI agents? Are you blocking them through the web browser? Are you blocking apps? And how fast are you able to respond? Remember that AIs are coming faster than we can keep up with, right? So that is something that it has to be taken into consideration. Change management is going to have to change and is going to have to adapt to be very fast paced at the pace that technology is advancing and evolving, right? I know some of us are thinking, wow, when can I become a baker, right? And leave this technology world that is going insane, right? Well, luckily we have the tools, right? All we have to do is just take a step back and think about it, right? And look at patterns. Everything has a pattern, right? Everything can be traced, right? You have APIs now. Not long ago, right? They announced a new SDK for Purview, where you're gonna have access to basically do everything that you can think of, right? You can fully customize your alerts. You can create automation. I don't believe in alerts just for the sake of alerting me. I don't care about an alert. I don't want to hear an alert. I want to take action based on an alert. I like those things. And you have the tools to do it today, right? If you go to the next slide, Sebastian. So not all data it's equally right accessible. Everything, but the problem is that AI has superpowers, right? AI is got that what I call the legacy domain admin rights, basically, right? It can see everything. We moved away from the domain admin days, right? But now we got a guy named AI that's basically doing the same thing, but this one is talking to everybody now. We have tools like the DSPM, right? for AI that can give you a view into what is actually what is actually happening in your environment, right? With into visibility with AI. There are things that need to be taken in place, right? That you need to do the contextual awareness, right? So it's not just what is doing, but what is doing, right? And who is doing it? And you start asking all the W's, right? What is the impact? It's not how much, because you can have a huge leak, right, of lots of data, but if it doesn't have any type of important information, it may not be as important as one single document that may have critical information, right? So that's basically it's how we do the focus on the impact. What is going to be the biggest impact? Um, Now, all of these things matter, right? Because these things are looking everywhere where you have data. Okay, so it's gonna give an analyst now the power of a basically of a CI, of a senior responder, right? So the CISO has to be very clear on the impact summary. So that's basically this was created for a CISO audience, right? For security officers. So you have to be very clear on the impact on the summaries, that why we're doing what we're doing in order to avoid all these pitfalls. Okay. So it's basically understand, prioritize, and act on the risk. And it happens all in real time. Does that mean that you won't be able to sleep? Well, it all depends how good of a implementation you do. So next slide, Sebastian. So Defender for Cloud Apps, this is actually one of the things that I recommend. Um, this is actually you can sanction AIs for the entire enterprise, right? You can say, yep, we're going to have access to DeepSeek, right? Or our own version of DeepSeek, and I'm going to block everything else. When I was saying that this is moving fast, um, things are going to appear on Defender for Cloud Apps. And the question is, how fast are you going to be able to look at these AIs and block them, whether sanction or unsanction them for use in the environment, right? So you're going to have app control. So basically, you can have complete control of blocking the entire thing, right? Um, so sometimes these things do come with a risk score to make decisions, but I would I would go into what I've always said, right? Less is more. So if you're gonna do AI in your environment, don't do them all. Just do a few, unless you guys are like the kind of company or environment that supports all browsers, right, including Linux and Mac and everything else. You're gonna have a lot harder time trying to wrangle in all that data. Okay, so yes, I'm not saying that you don't have to use AI. I'm saying if you're gonna use AI, keep the list to less than all the fingers you have in one hand. If you have more than that, it may become unruly to manage. Um, so let's move to the next slide. The APIs and SDKs. So this is where you actually become the mechanic, right? You're looking under the hood. You're not just looking at the car. You have a car, right? We call it Purview in this case. But here's where we go under the engine, right? We open the hood of the car, and here's where we start looking at really making adjustments that we wouldn't be able to do with the user interface. So this is where we actually can go beyond. This is where every organization is going to have a unique need, right? So this is where you start integrating for faster decisions, and even for anything you can go faster and fully automate like this with the help of the SDKs or APIs.
Yeah.
Next.
Sorry. This is the part that I call Microsoft IKEA. uh, we know that Microsoft have several pendings related to business-friendly report, and as same Angelo mentioned, here we can build all those report, all those tools to show the right information to the right people. We need to understand how we can use all this information to reach the right people with the right information. And to go forward to today with the trying to close, at least in some way, this specific part, I want to show the tools that today you have available to start protecting or at least know what is happening in your organization. Today, in the Purview portal, and as I mentioned previously at the beginning, today is appearing a new capability on Purview. This is new. Yesterday was not available, at least on my interface. Today, I connect and I saw this new capability that is integrate with Security Copilot agents. Here we will need to evolve, learn, and go forward with several things. But let's go to the most common tool that we can start using today, and is DSPM for AI. With DSPM for AI, we are able to see what is happening with the data, with the sensitive information, and with interaction that we have with other AIs. Here we can see that several information was used with Microsoft 365 Copilot, but we can saw that as well that people is working with ChatGPT, Claude, Poe, Gemini, and several others. If we go to report, we are able to see that interactions with external AIs. And as we were discussing at the beginning,
You went silent, Sebastian.
yeah,
Yep.
sorry, can you hear me?
Yep. Now I
Yeah,
can hear you.
okay. I was saying that uh, today, all those free services that we were discussing at the beginning are not free services. They are using our information. And for that reason, I understand the tools that we can use to identify who is using, who is accessing, who is managing our information through these free services or the same Copilot services. We need to understand who is accessing, and here we can have some details. Something that we need to be very careful in this point, at least with the DSPM for AI, is to view all those externals AIs. We need to use endpoint DLP, and we need to deploy the specific agent for the browsers. Inclusive, you need to redeploy the agent for Edge if you want to start getting all this information. Here we can see several activities that are happening in the backend with our information. The other thing is this Activity Explorer is an Activity Explorer with asteroids. Is not the same Activity Explorer that you can find on DLP or information protection. This Activity Explorer has some additional filters to focus on AI. And the other big deal that we can find here are the reports that we can create about overexposure. And here we can see all the items that we can find in our SharePoint site, how many of that information is labeled or not labeled, how many of those information contain sensitive data. And plus, in this table, we can see with who those sites are shared, with internal people, with external people, with several options that we can have. And for each of these one, now we have the capability to have some details, identify, we can scan the items for each of these one, we can protect, or at least we will drive to the right steps that we need to take to start protecting our information, at least to start having control on all of this. The Purview SDK that Angelo was mentioning previously can permit us to identify prompts, identify several information that can we use to create some custom report and integrate with Power Automate or Power Apps to take some actions. The other one that can be very helpful, there are several tools, but today to show only two, is Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps. On Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps, we are able to discover the applications that today are in use, and we can identify here on the categories those externals AIs that today are in use, that today someone in our organization is using to analyze the data. And here we can see the traffic. And the most important point, maybe to start, is the upload. Because if we are able to see a big size of data that is uploaded, that means that the people, the end users, are using those specific AIs to analyze information. Here, as Angelo mentioned and I mentioned previously, MDCA can be a great game changer if you are able to understand how to use this tool, because we can create some app governance and we can sanction the application and say, okay, users can only use applications that are approved. And if we are not sanctioned yet the applications, we can block the use of those applications. And here coming this a third part of questions. What are you doing today in your organizations to collect this information? Are you aware that you can start using this report today? This is very simple. You can go today and enable all these capabilities and start getting this report, at least to have an idea about what is happening in your organizations with your data. Anyone that wants to share? In that case, let's at least from the Leo's lesson understand what is happening, or at least which are these main points that we need to have on mind. Uh, let's avoid to wait until the next Leo. Here are believe that are the main point, and maybe you want to, Angelo, you want to share some insight related to this point.
I think it we cannot wait anymore. I think Leo has already happened. We just don't know it yet. I'm always kind of a half empty kind of guy, glass half empty. I've never been the half full. So I say that I say that it's already there. It's already started. You're already leaking data. You just don't know it yet. Um, that's the way I would take it. I would take it with a sense of urgency and say, okay, maybe we need to start thinking about how can we get this right handled. That's what I would do.
Thanks for that. We need to understand that the as we said previously, the AI is here. It's leaking your data, and the big deal is the real damage is silence at first. We are not clear. We are not viewing what is happening today, and we need to take the actions. Uh, After that, and as we mentioned previously, this is evolving very fast. Microsoft is doing several improvement, is uh, delivering new capabilities, new tools that we can use, and we need to understand which of those tools can be very helpful, like the security copilot agents. I don't know if you was aware about all those new capabilities, but with the copilot agent, and Angelo mentioned something about that, we are able to simplify some of our effort. The only thing, and we were discussing in other moment about that, is who watch the watchers. We need to be very careful about all those agents. This agent can help us to resolve several things, go forward, identify all those odd behaviors, but we need to take care about the use, because same as we were discussing during all this presentation, is we are not protecting yet completely our information. And as same, this agent can help us to improve and um, fix several things related to data protection. This same agent can access to the data as well. DSPM for AI is a tool that is growing very fast, can give us several capabilities to protect our information. I extend this invitation on my YouTube channel. You can find an old webinar about DSPM and DSPM for AI. This tool is something that we need to start using today to start protecting our data. There is some additional tools that can be used to educate to the end users about what is happening. We can see that plus to the common policy tips, we have some enhanced pop-ups to work with DLP, with sensitivity labels, to explain to the users that they need to do to protect the data. Microsoft is applying more protection, more security barriers, to say in some way, to the Copilot agent to avoid read some information, use the principle of less privilege to access to the data. But as we were viewing in the second part of the lab, end users can still find in the way to reach the data, to find something that permit to access to that information. But again, Microsoft is working on that. Inside the risk management is another big game changer in this one, we extend the invitation to start using inside the risk management with all the new AI capabilities to manage the prompt. That is very near used in a very interesting way. All the stuff related to communication compliance that can detect that the prompt that are in use have some behaviors related to money laundering or manage market shares or other kind of things. We need to understand how we can start applying all these capabilities. Plus, uh, the point that you don't need today to start blocking anything. You can start applying all those capabilities in audit only. That permit to start having some visibility about how the AI is used in your organization. And to start closing this one, Angelo, maybe you want to talk about what is happening with compliance manager and all this assessment related to the AI use.
Yes. So compliance manager, right? And if you want to talk about the what we've always called the journey when it comes to data protection, right? Compliance manager is always at the last leg, right? When we have the crawl, the stand, the walk and run. Well, compliance manager is at that point, at the running point, right? This is when you actually need to be in compliance with regulations, whether it's industry based or based on location. We have a lot of new AI regulations that are coming all the time. For example, the US has got one, right? It's NSIT. I know GDPR, it's actually created a new AI. It's a very comprehensive law. And now, because this is a phenomena that is new, all countries actually are implementing their own. For example, in Latin America, right, you see that both Chile, Brazil, and now Colombia are having. Chile has already launched their new law that is going to go into effect. Even the small island of Puerto Rico has actually gotten their own law for AI, for data protection for AI. So, I mean, when you look at the entire landscape throughout the world, and every country now is actually enacting laws to protect against AI, that should give you all the ammunition you need as to start acting. Why we need to act? Well, that is the reason, right? So this is something that Microsoft can help you. There are a few templates in what is called a compliance manager, which will keep you. It's like a checklist of all the things that you need to do in order to stay safe. This is by no means an auditing tool that will actually make you pass the audit. No, no, no. But it is a big help if you need to have like a checklist to see where you stand in the journey of securing your data for AI. So that's actually what I would suggest is if there is no policy or law for the country that you are in or that you define, there are templates. And if there are no templates, you can always create your own custom templates based on that and use them in the compliance manager to see where you stand. What's your score in today's world in the AI protection? That would be my departing message to you is use the compliance manager. It is there for you to use, leverage it, and learn from it. That would be my thoughts on that.
Thanks for that, Angelo. In general, to closing this presentation, the AI is happening now. Here we can see the common numbers that you can find in any place, but it's something that is a daily activities that we can see every day. We can view this bring your own AI is happening today. and we need to take care. We need to start doing something. And to finish this presentation, I believe this is the main question. What are you going to do about it? Or what are you doing right now? The idea is understand all the odd behaviors. Today, we go through 3 different labs. One to discuss about what the end users are doing, that odd behaviors that can finally impact on this AI scenario. Then how the AI is used to reach or validate or review the data and identify all that data that is overexposure. And then we saw the different tools that today we can use to identify that data that is overexposure, overturn, or the tools that are in use for AI, and the capabilities that we have today to start building our own report. There is several things. Finally, I want to extend the invitation to take a moment to complete the survey I put on the chat. And I don't know if you have any comment, questions that you want to share with us. In that case, I want to extend my gratitude to Angelo today. That was company here on this presentation. Here we have some comment from Maria Teresa. Thanks for. Yeah, there is in long terms that you will need to understand, and maybe this DSPM for AI, this report about overexposure can be very helpful. More if we are able to use the sensitivity labels to access control. That is another big deal that can be used with the sensitivity labels. Angelo, you want to share something?
Yeah, so sensitivity label, right? And I had a conversation yesterday with someone, is basically what we used to refer as IRM, right? Information rights management. Well, in today's world, we have information protection, and sensitivity label is the first step. It's the very first step to start protecting your data. It's not. Is it going to be enough? Unlikely. So you'll need to start thinking about stronger measurements in the longer term. So the first step, right, is where I call the low hanging fruit, which is what Maria Teresa is doing, is exactly that. So you are starting the journey. You're in the beginning of the journey. So you are on the right track. Sensitivity labels, what I call the beginning of the journey. And you have a long row ahead. So it don't despair, but it gets better. Okay, so at least you're beginning to do something, and then you'll see that you're gonna have to do DLP later on, and you're gonna have to start doing more and more and more things. But it has to be a very robust approach to protect the data.
Anyone else? Well, in that case, thanks for participating today. As I put on the chat, I will upload these recorded sessions later on my YouTube channel. You can subscribe and like if you want. And that is, I will start sharing soon another webinar and another topic. Thanks a lot today for your participation. Have a good one.